Hey everyone, David Nagel here. Come on in to another Successful Mind podcast. Learn about control and why people can't find themselves. We'll see you there. Hey everyone, David Nagel. Welcome to the Successful Mind podcast. That's where we are, the Successful Mind podcast. It's really great to be here with everybody today. And I've noticed something that's pretty interesting, and we've actually talked about this a few times on podcasts. Why people have a difficult time finding themselves, finding their authenticity, knowing who they are. But there's something that I wanted to cover that it's just I don't know what brought my attention to it, but I noticed that it's a big problem for a lot of people, and that's when people have individuals in their life consistently that are constantly trying to control them. And I realized as long as we're being controlled by other people, whether we know it or we don't know it, and it's really bad when we know it and we're putting up with it versus not knowing it and we don't know what to do with it. We don't know that it's actually happening, so to speak, is the idea that it really becomes very difficult to understand where you're making decisions from, like who you really are as a person. Because you can't really go to what you want. You're so damn consumed with the idea of what other people are thinking and what they're wanting and trying to always think through and navigate situations that you're never really in touch with yourself. So the whole idea here is we're going to do a little dive on how to recognize if you're being controlled by other people, what that actually looks like. So that's one place that you can clean up in your life and really start to find your own authenticity. So when I started thinking about this lesson, I was thinking to myself, okay, how did this play out in my life? Which was really fascinating when I really started to do a dive on it for myself. And it's not like the things I'm going to share with you from like my childhood, like I didn't know about it before, but I don't know that I ever really looked at it in the scope of what we're talking about today. So there was this deal that with my mother, she was extremely controlling her whole life. She controlled everybody, and you wouldn't know it if you were in that family. Like if you were in the family, if you were in, and I mean the extended family, it wasn't like it was standing out where people would say, damn, she is unbelievably controlling. Like, well, look what she's doing to the people around her. Like nobody really knew that this is what it was, which is always fascinating with any kind of behavior when you're growing up. I mean, you've even heard people talk about this when it comes to poverty, that the idea is that they didn't know that they were poor when they were growing up because all they knew was the environment that they're in. We also know that this is has a lot of specific relevance to abuse and controlling individuals, and also the way a person views themselves, meaning that we have a tendency to view ourselves through the looking glass of everybody who's reflecting back to us our own life. And we self-adjust with that. So until we experience something different, we don't really know we're being controlled, or we don't know that we're poor, or we don't know that we're being abused. We may have an idea that something is off, but usually by the time we become aware of it, we're already in our 20s, maybe even older, before we start to become aware that there's a different way to actually be in the world. So I had this issue with my mother when I was a kid, well, all the way up until she died, actually, where she was always controlling. She was always manipulating the situation, but it was really hard to tell when she wasn't. And I remember having a conversation with somebody years ago, and they said to me something that I'll never forget, and I just kind of want to lay this down for everybody. They told me that manipulative people don't know how to be any other way. They're always manipulating. And even today, when I hear myself say that, it causes me to kind of take a step back and think for a moment, because if a person's always manipulating, you never basically what we're saying is that you're never really getting an authentic communication or an authentic relationship with this individual, even when it seems good. So my mom had great qualities about her. She could be a very caring person. She could be very caring to her grandchildren. She could be very caring to other individuals. But there was like a hard line with her where that would be shut off. And the person that was sharing this information with me basically said, even the parts that are caring are manipulative. Like it's all well thought out. So much so that it's ingrained. She thinks from the idea of control, from the idea of manipulation, and everything has to go through that filter of rules that she has in order to be able to control everything around her. And when you see her get angry, which was another thing, nobody could be more angry in our household than my mother. She owned the anger. So anger was not something that was allowed to be expressed. If you started to get angry, she would get more angry. If you got more angry, she would get more angry. And ultimately, because especially when you're little, she's got the power. That's when, like, I'm going to start taking things away from you, or you're going to get spanked, or you're going to get grounded, or, and she would say, keep it up, keep it up, keep it up. And I'll just take more and more and more and more and more away from you until you finally cave. There was no way she was ever going to back down from any kind of argument like that. She always had to be right. So here's the things that I want to run through, and I think people will find these fascinating. You may want to listen to this a couple of times and really take a look at the specific individuals in your life and ask yourself, do you see these behaviors? And do you see these behaviors consistently? Because the truth is, everybody can have some of these behaviors sometimes. It's when you see them consistently that it really raises a red flag for an individual. So the first one is blaming you. A person who is making everything your fault all the time. And this can be done in very overt ways, but also there could be a covertness around this. Blaming can be like, this is your fault, I'm accusing you, I'm telling you to take responsibility. My tone can change, my body language can change, pointing a finger at you, giving you the cold shoulder. Like, there can be a lot of energy behind this in an overt way, where I'm almost in an attacking mode around the idea of blaming. We'll also find out that whenever there's any consideration that it might not be your fault, that it might actually be their fault, it can actually even get worse. Like, the accusations can really ramp up substantially around blaming. And then there's fact finding, right? So when a person's blaming, they are going to look for facts and figures to be able to throw at you as just cause. Like, here's the verification, here's the evidence, here's the facts that you actually screwed this up. And it doesn't mean that you're at fault. But in the process of doing that, they can also do something that I'm going to talk about in a minute, which is gaslighting, which is a kind of a rewriting of history or denying what your experience is. But the covert way can actually come in as like joking around. Like, a person can joke around in a way where you and I'm not going to give an example of this. I'm going to tell you why, because I don't want to put it in a box for you. But here's how to find out if you're actually being blamed in a covert way. Have you ever had a conversation with somebody before and you walk away for whatever reason and you feel guilty? Like, there's this feeling of guilt or shame that comes over you. And you don't really know why. It doesn't seem to be 100% obvious, but there is this guilt-shame thing that's actually taking place, or you just feel bad. You just feel bad. The person is doing something in some way that is causing you to feel bad. But what's important to know about this is that they're doing it intentionally, even though it may seem like a joke. It may seem like a complete joke. It may seem like a natural conversation that would have absolutely no bearing of consequence whatsoever, but you walk away kind of feeling like shit. So the first thing is blaming. Write it down and say to yourself, who blames constantly? It can also be abdication of responsibility. That's another way of blaming, right? They don't actually come out and say, hey, BT, it's your fault. Hey, so-and-so, it's your fault. But what they refuse to do is to accept responsibility and just leave it there like they're drawing a line. Well, then who the hell's responsible for it? So they're not actually saying it's your fault, but they're not accepting responsibility for themselves. Another one, a big one, and we talked about this in some of the stuff that we did around abuse, how to recognize an abusive person, is isolation. Isolation is a very dangerous thing. It's usually quite covert, and it starts happening subtly with most individuals. So abusive people are really great at this, because here's the deal. If I'm going to control you, now think about this. If I want to control somebody, I have to either figure out a way to manipulate the people that are around them that would be giving them a contradicting message from me. Like, I don't want something to contradict what I'm saying. So if I can't manipulate the people that are around this person, I have to figure a way to isolate them. And isolation can come in many forms. There could be emotional isolation. There could be physical isolation, where a person tries to just keep you all to themselves. There could be financial, spiritual isolation, really removing you away from your resources that give you your autonomy in life. So think about it like this. If I'm going to isolate you, how am I going to do it? I'm probably going to try to find a way for the people that you're around to be wrong or not good for you. And part of the deal with this is that you take any human being on the planet, you're going to find good things about the person, you're going to find not good things about the person. We're polarizing people, right? We have good qualities, we have not good qualities. Some are better and worse than others, but regardless, there is no perfect person. A manipulator is really good at taking any individual and blowing up the smallest things in their behavior to make them look like they could actually be a pretty nasty individual, or finding specific evidence all the time. If I take a person who is genuinely a good person, and I have a conversation with you about this person, but every time I have a conversation with you about this individual, all I'm telling you is what they've done wrong or the bad things. It creates a frame in your mind, because the mind is very interesting the way that this works. It's basically a command that you're giving to the mind. It builds a picture of this person not being a good person. And that becomes your reality in a totality kind of way, where you only see what's not good. But then what happens is it literally shifts your entire perception of this individual. And before you know it, you find yourself agreeing with somebody like, yeah, that person did this. And yeah, you're right. Look at how they did that. And yeah, you're right. There was last Tuesday when they did this. And before you know it, you're convincing yourself. See, the person already put the seed of manipulation to isolate in your brain. So now you're actually looking for the things that they manipulated you to look at. So we have to be really careful when it comes to this, because this can happen. See, look, if you don't know yourself, when somebody says XYZ about another person, you're not going to say to yourself, I don't know. I need to think for myself on this one. I don't know that I accept that. Like, I hear what you're saying, but I don't know that I accept that. When a person is really trying to control you, that gets whittled away and you don't feel like you can say that. All of a sudden, you start going into their authority that they're presenting, and you start agreeing with them. Yeah. Even if you don't agree, ask yourself this question. Have you ever been in a conversation where somebody says something about somebody else and you don't agree with it, right? Internally, in your head, you don't agree with it. You're saying, I don't agree with this. But verbally, you're like, yeah, I get it. I agree. Why do you do that? Why are you doing that? The fact that you're doing that is a real clear indication that they're manipulating you, trying to control you in some way. Another great way that this happens is keeping score and constant criticism. These two things are ways that, well, we just talked about how they would do it with another individual, right? So if I keep score with another individual and only tell you what's wrong, then you form the belief that that person's wrong. But what if I do it with you? What if I've isolated you from somebody else's opinion and I start doing nothing but keeping score based on your behavior and what you do? The mind is so amazing that if we don't stand guard over what's coming in and really constantly just do a little double check. Like, am I good with this? Am I good with this? Am I good with this? A person can start feeding us BS about ourselves because they only pick up on everything that we've done wrong. And it could be very subtle things like, why do you always put the salt shaker over here? Like there's an indication that there's something wrong with where you put the salt shaker. Why do you put the toilet paper roll on the toilet so it rolls off the back or rolls off the front? Opposite, it'll always be the opposite to what they think, with the indication that you're actually doing something wrong when these are just actually preferences in your life. But your mind is receiving this command. And as your mind receives the command, all of a sudden you start looking at everything that you do with the same kind of criticism. The point is that even though your brain is doing this, it's not you that's doing it. Somebody else is controlling you, right? Intimidation. Now, when a person is in your life and they can intimidate you, you really have to ask yourself, how did the relationship get to a point where I could be intimidated? So intimidation could be blackmail, it could be jealousy, it could be I'm going to hold something over you. I learned from a guy many years ago who was put in a very precarious situation. That there's nothing, absolutely nothing worth allowing somebody else to intimidate you, even if it means exposing one of the most embarrassing things about yourself. Now, think about this. If there was something that somebody knew about you that was not flattering and could really cause a problem, say with a spouse, with a child, with a coworker, with a boss, like there could actually be some fallout if this person knew this. And somebody starts to threaten you or intimidate you with information on how they would expose you with something. If you go along with it, you're being intimidated, you're being controlled, you're being manipulated. But if you own yourself in a position like that, you would then, if you wanted to take the power back, you would go to the person that they're threatening to tell, or they're insinuating that they might find out the information, and tell them yourself. So you can't have somebody hold something over you. And I think a lot of us are raised with the idea of what other people think to that point. So that's one that can really sneak in very easily. But I think that if you do that once, you'll do it forever, because there's no freedom like owning the good and the bad side of yourself, the things that you've done great and the things that you've done that you might regret, or it might not have a shining star on them. Let's put it that way. But if you own it, you would go tell somebody, you immediately take the power away for that person to control or to intimidate you. The next one is constant drama. So constant drama falls under a category that I like to put it under, which is kind of like behavioral, where it's in various different ways a person can control not just you, but a group of individuals by how they show up in a room, okay? Some people, for whatever reason, they just have drama in their life. It may be that they have a need to be seen. They have very low self-esteem. They need people to pay attention to them all the time. They need some kind of validation for what they're going through in their life, who they are. And when people are constantly showing up with drama in their life, what is it that they're trying to get from everybody else? So that would be the question. Like, when we all know somebody who's constant drama, and it doesn't have to be bad drama either, right? So there's good drama, there's bad drama. It's always some kind of a damn story that's going on with this individual. What is it that they're trying to get? Are they trying to get attention? Most people that are doing this are trying to get attention. But what the other thing that they're doing is they control the narrative in the room. When somebody walks in and they've got a bag full of drama, everybody is reacting to that drama. Everybody's seeing it. Everybody's witnessing it. Everybody's having their own emotional reaction. Everybody has a story going on in their own mind about what's going on with this drama. And what it does is that now everybody's focused on this one person, or what this one person's bag of drama is. That person that walked in with it successfully manipulated the entire room. We get tons of questions about this around the holidays. Like every holiday, we get all kinds of questions that come into our company around how do we handle the drama with family members. And the biggest way to handle the drama is to not buy into the drama. I don't care how bad a person's story is. The moment you step into the story, you allow that person to control you. You can listen to the story and you could just have your own opinion about it, but not go deep into the story, like validating every single thing that they say. Because when you do that, you're now stepping into their ability to control the narrative. And let me give you pop a couple of ones off here that they all go together. They don't need too much explanation, but you can look at it and really understand when you see this a lot, it's not the person having the problem, it's this person's way of actually manipulating you. So moodiness, the idea of having to walk on eggshells, a person who consistently ignores boundaries. Hey, ignoring boundaries at all is a problem, but if a person is a healthy individual, they may not know that they crossed a boundary. So if you tell them, just tell them, clearly and firmly, this is a boundary for me, and a healthy person will stop. They won't cross the boundary again. But somebody who's constantly causing boundaries is constantly trying to keep you on the edge, make you feel uncomfortable, and always go over to the manipulation that they're trying to create. Jealousy is a big one. And it's not just with people of the opposite sex or the same sex or in a sexual way. It can be jealousy of money, it can be jealousy of friends, it can be jealousy of position in a working or a business environment. Another one is people that are constantly trying to change you. They're never really satisfied with you, being doing things the way that you do them. They're always making little comments like, you could do it better this way, or try it this way, or do it this way, or do it this way. And the thing is that these ideas that are being put out there, they're not requested. You're not requesting them. They're just constantly offering you, and they do it with the idea of being helpful. So you think, oh, well, the person's so nice, they're just trying to be helpful. No, they're not. They're manipulating you. That's what they're doing. And that's it. You need to set a boundary to stop it. Okay, gaslighting is a big one. And I'll probably bring it in and kind of wrap it up here with this gaslighting thing, because this will go too long. And it's probably one of the most important, because if a person can get you to doubt what you think, you're very, very open to manipulation. But more than that, it can literally begin to cause you to lose your mind because you start questioning yourself. So gaslighting is when a person basically denies or tries to change the history of what you said or you did, or something that everybody was involved with together. This person is literally a denier of the history. They can also deny how you meant something, what you said, an experience that you had together. Like, there's no end to this. Just understand that it's denying, and they rewrite it the way that they want it to believe it or see it. Back to my mother. She was an unbelievable gaslighter. I didn't even know what the term was. I mean, it took me a long time. I was in self-improvement for quite some time before I even heard that word. I don't even know that if it was a word that was being used when I first started studying. But I realized, I really took, like, after my mom passed away a few years back, I did some like soul searching of that relationship and really kind of looked at it in its totality, the way that it warped and changed, and there were good times and there were bad times over the period of my lifetime with her. And I realized something that I had mistaken as like a memory problem with my mother. She always, even when I was a kid, you would say something and she would say, that didn't happen. That never happened. It didn't happen that way. You don't know what you're talking about. That never happened. And it would be in almost any kind of subject. And I would think to myself, like, Mom's got a really bad memory. And she would actually walk around and she would tell people, I have a really bad memory. I have a really bad memory. But when she would deny something, it was never her memory. It was never her memory. If she couldn't remember where she put the salt, she would say, I have a bad memory. But if anybody said, hey, do you remember when we were on vacation 5 years ago and we did this and it was so funny and everybody laughed? And she'd be like, that never happened. What are you talking about? That never happened. It would be usually with things that didn't make a difference. It wasn't like we were talking about anything that was serious or embarrassing, but what she was doing was she was actually trying to control the way that we think. If a gaslighter's whole idea is to get you to really question yourself, then they become the ultimate authority in your life. I mean, maybe not the ultimate, but a big authority in your life. As long as it can chip away at your self-esteem and you don't actually know yourself, you can't find yourself, you can't build on it, excuse me, and you can't make yourself stronger. So the whole idea was that if she could consistently change history and change the narrative, then she got to rewrite things to fit her narrative, and she got you to behave based on what her narrative was. Because if you didn't go along with the way that she gaslighted something, she would become fiercely angry. Now, here's the kicker. This is the part that was so confusing for me for a long time. Her second husband, the man was not my father. He was my stepfather. And I never lived there long from the time that they got married. I moved out right around the time that they were actually getting married. But I knew him very well, like would see him on holidays and stuff. She actually got him to go along with the gaslighting. So, and I would look at him and I would say, don't you remember this? Like, you were sitting right there. It was 2 years ago. We were right at this table and this is what happened. He's like, no, I don't remember. She literally started to get me to question myself. And I remember sitting there with my wife and we would be on the way home and I'm like, you tell me that didn't happen. Is this me? Am I losing my freaking mind? And my wife would be like, nope, that exactly happened. I have no idea what the hell they're experiencing, but this is the craziest thing. And she would do it over and over with people, almost with everybody. And people would kind of look at her like, no, it happened. And she'd be adamant. So she would be so intimidating that she would get you to agree that it didn't, even if you didn't believe that it didn't. That is unbelievable manipulation. So the whole idea here is to be able to identify how people manipulate so that you can stop it in your life and really start to trust your own thinking and make decisions for yourself. Because one of the worst things that you could ever wake up and experience is this. You wake up one day and you realize you don't know why you're making the decisions you're making. And what I mean by that is that you're actually making decisions because somebody else got in your head and you're doing it in order to keep them happy, but it's not actually what you want. But if it goes on too long, you'll think they're your decisions, but they're really not. And here's one of the biggest signs of this. This is the question to ask yourself. How do you know you want what you want? Now, ask yourself this question first. What do I want? One of the biggest questions I get from people is, how do I know what I want? And when somebody says to me, how do I know what I want? I know that they've been manipulated so much in their life. They're not in their head to give themselves permission of what they really want. They're making decisions based on what other people want, and they can't actually own it for themselves. So, what do I want? And then how do I know what I want? And that's where you have to get quiet, right? Because if you say, I don't know why I want that. Well, if you don't know why you want it, chances are it's because somebody else wants it in your life. And that could be who you're being, what you're doing, what you want to have in your life. It could be all of those things in any of those areas, okay? The idea is that you pull back, you rebuild your self-esteem, you start calming down. In other words, take some time for yourself. I would journal this if I was you. Okay, that's a little manipulation right there. I'm not you, so if you like the idea, journal it. But really sit down and ask yourself the questions about what do I want and how do I know that I want it? When you start hearing your own internal yes or your own internal no, you know that you're coming home on this deal. The other thing is practice setting boundaries with people. And boundaries are just really easy. Like, I'm not up for that. I'm not open for that. That's not for me. You do you. I'm cool with my decisions. And if they keep pushing, it's like, I'm not going there with you. But you have to be firm about it, okay? You can even say, I'm not having the conversation. And if it's really bad, you get up and leave. Period. Like, you have to be firm with people, because a manipulator is not necessarily going to stop when you try to stop them. they're going to try to push back because the only thing they know how to do is manipulate, and they feel threatened when their manipulation's not working. They will feel threatened. They will get angry. They will be scared. They won't tell you that they're scared, but they will defense that with anger. Sometimes they throw tantrums. They give the silent treatment. They walk out. They pout. They're literally trying to control everything in their environment. And when somebody stops that or puts, the hand up and be like, hey, no, that's not for me. They don't know what to do with it because then the idea is in their mind, well, I'm not controlling this person. What does that mean for me? And they don't know because their whole life was spent controlling because somebody controlled them. That's how people become control. Or they were abused in some other way and they developed it to survive. Couple of other things. I just want to throw these out there right here at the end so you have them because I think they're important. Here's a more positive type of control. People that flatter, people that charm, people that adore you, people that tell you they like the same things that you constantly, but they really don't. Those are some ways that a person can come in kind of with a charming personality and control you because you buy into the idea that they're approving of you all of the time. And the one of the more nasty ways is obviously the bully. It's somebody that constantly breaks apart your statements and has to analyze everything that you say. And then there's two more. The person who comes in with being helpless. So they're always being helpless. And out of the kind heart that everybody mostly has, they always want to help this person. That is also a form of manipulation. So that's the idea, folks. I just wanted to run through this, give you a little deeper dive on the idea of specific control for manipulation and how it keeps you from finding who you really are, because you deserve to be the best you that you can be. We'll see you on the next Successful Mind podcast. That's a wrap, folks. Controlling people, and why people can't find themselves. I think it was really great. This will allow you to start building a new self-esteem and really take charge of your life. Tell your friends. If you know somebody that's dealing with a controlling person and they don't know what to do, tell them to listen to this podcast. It'll really help kind of open the mind there. Tell your friends, subscribe, and we'll see you on the next show.